Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I have applied my heart to seek and search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. Happy Sunday. I think the old wise teacher sounds a little cranky. Maybe he needs a nap. I don't know. But I know our Thursday morning Bible study recently wrestled with this book. It's a very honest passage. One thing I like about it, it acknowledges despair, frustration, futility in life. It doesn't smooth it over, right? It doesn't accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. It doesn't just look on the bright side. It points out the absurdity in life, meaninglessness, and also the unfairness that we encounter. He says, "So I turned about and I gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors, because sometimes a person who's toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is a great evil and vanity. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is vexation." This is part of the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, and I still remember reading this for the first time and actually being delighted to see that this was in the Bible. This wasn't hidden away, this, difficult time in the King Solomon's life. It was okay to ask these questions. It was normal to be frustrated with the phonies out there. That in Scripture you can ask big questions. You can even have some room to despair, or at least be exasperated. You're not alone. Ecclesiastes, or the preacher, the teacher, different ways it's described or translated, attributed to King Solomon. Hebrew scholar Chad Bird wonders if the book title should not be Ecclesiastes, but just Vanity, because that is peppered throughout the book. The Hebrew root of that word vanity is breath, like air. That same root word leads to the word for idols, something that lacks substance, but yet we focus so much on. Something insubstantial, vanity, is fleeting as air. Life, he felt, is just chasing after wind. There's a show came out recently on Apple TV with John Hamm called Your Friends and Neighbors. Not a kid-friendly show, just so you know. It's in the genre of rich man midlife crisis, divorce, everything falls apart show. You've seen those before. He's a uber-rich divorced man living in his second home in the wealthy suburbs of New York. He thinks he's on the path to the good life, and then poof, it's all air. The people he thought were his friends were not. Actually, people who he knew well took advantage of him. All vanity. No good news in his friends and his neighbors. Will the people he spends, and we spend so much time trying to please, will they be there for you? Will they be at your funeral? It illustrates a dog-eat-dog world. Vanity, superficialness, superficiality reigns. I've served with an Episcopal priest, and he used to serve both in Manhattan and a very wealthy suburb, Westchester County, New York. And so he served people like in that show, and he once said, some of these homes, these amazing homes, he said, but what I noticed is the longer the driveway to the home, the deeper the despair. And there seems to be a lot of shows like that these days. They remade The Four Seasons, if you remember back in the 80s, the Alan Alda movie, The Four Seasons. They redid that on I think, Netflix. The Sirens, about life in the Hamptons. That the rich are just full of suffering and despair, backbiting, seeking after vanity, getting bored with their third car, their second marriage, and their fourth home renovation. In other words, money doesn't give you what you need. The ancient wisdom of Ecclesiastes is true. This wealth is meaningless. But this message isn't just for the wealthiest 1%. As Chad Bird writes, this book, Ecclesiastes, drops a bomb on our private towers of Babel. We are all easily bloated with self-importance and our delusions of grandeur. But it's also not just an anti-materialist message, right? I just say, renounce all goods. If I was doing that, I would be an enormous hypocrite. I have stuff. I like money. This isn't about renouncing all your possessions, becoming a hermit. That would be just going back to works righteousness. It would lead to a different kind of pride and vanity in your ability to renounce things. We have work, we have jobs, we all think about retirement, healthcare costs, kids, grandkids. But will we be consumed by that worry? Will we lose our soul, as Jesus says? The very relationships and futures that we're trying so hard to secure. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart, which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, his work is a vexation. Even in the night, his heart does not rest. Is your current pace working for you, for your soul, for your sleep? His heart cannot rest at night. Thousands of years later, this passage still rings true. The multi-million-dollar sleep industry shows us that. We can't sleep, and even when we do, our dreams are full of anxiety dreams. Fear about our security, our future, the next big deal, or the next corporate downsizing, the next crash. So where does our hope and security lie? Are we holding it tightly to the detriment of others, to the detriment of our soul? Are we ignorant of the parasite slowly eating away inside of us? I remember that Expedia ad, the travel website ad during the Super Bowl a few years ago. Ewan McGregor said in the ad, "Nobody sits on their deathbed thinking, I wish I bought a thinner TV." What I thought was important wasn't. The ad's point is that, better to spend time with people, family, vacation, all that stuff is valuable. In our gospel reading, somebody says to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But Jesus said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to the man, "Take care and be on guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." So this man calls out to Jesus amidst Jesus' teaching, touring around Galilee. This man wants Jesus to be his, local civil magistrate, a judge at the gate. Tradition, and a Jewish tradition, to be the judge. And his request is a real one. This happens very often, both back in the day and today. Having served in ministry for a while, I've seen this story many times. Problems with inheritance. What to do when your parent is dying. It can bring out the worst in families. Taking advantage of others, people getting done dirty. Sidebar, give it all away now. Give it to the grandkids' college fund. Give it to the church. Give it to ministries helping the poor. Don't leave it behind for them all to argue over. Giving yields joy and generosity. But Jesus wants this guy to know he's more than just some civil judge. More than that, he's offering more than giving you the money you deserve, as if that will make you happy. Is this man's question really about fairness? Or does Jesus know that there's something else going on here in this man's fight with his brother? This man needs to fire his lawyer and talk to his brother in person. So Jesus says to the man, "Take care, be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." Am I just to stand here and say, greed is bad, right? Money can't buy happiness. Well, yes, we are asked again to remember this, that it will not give us peace, because we forget, all of us. But Jesus always goes deeper than just saying the truth. He tells a story. He tells a parable to get through our own defenses that, well, I'm not like that, or that's those other people, or those people on TV. Jesus tells a parable to help us stop and consider our lives, to think. And Jesus told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' He said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store my grain and my goods. I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." He gathers up all this extra bumper crop, builds bigger barns, bigger granaries, and thinks, well, I'll just be happy with all of this. Eat, drink, and be merry, that this will make me happy. And God says, the things you have prepared, whose will they be? It's all going to Goodwill. It's all being thrown out. In this parable, this man has a soliloquy. He talks to himself. Now for us, this seems, I think for me at least, normal. But in the first century, this was a very self-centered thing to do in plays or literature. If somebody suddenly says to themselves, it's seen as being self-centered. So Jesus is painting this guy as very egotistical, self-centered from the outset. Now he builds these bigger barns and granaries. Again, that seems pretty normal to us, right? We're used to giant farms with giant granaries, the old rice silos in Katy. But remember, this was a time of subsistence economy, not giant, eco or agribusiness. For first century readers, for one man, this was crazy. The idea that one person would have all this extra food stored up for themselves and then would need to build bigger, would tear down his own barns and granaries to build bigger ones, wouldn't just seem selfish, but ridiculous, gratuitous. As Larry Parsley writes, who doesn't secretly long for some unanticipated bumper crop, striking oil, winning the lottery? Right? I think we can all identify with that. To be able to just sit back and rest. Again, as if we could really rest. As if it would make us happy. This man in the parable doesn't stop. He doesn't stop and consider how he should respond to his blessings. He says, I will say to myself, self is another word for life, a parable for salvation, his soul. He's equating life, his soul, with possessions. Jesus is showing the foolishness of this man that he thinks he'll be able to be happy with this, that life is just about being secure enough, winning the rat race, the early retirement contest. Or is it saying to us, put things into perspective, putting to death the hope that we can find security in our granaries, peace in our bank accounts, in more work. But can we hold things loosely? Can we look elsewhere for peace? Jesus said, take no thought for the morrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil therein. He says, we've got enough to worry about today. We cannot add a single hour to our life with worry, but to live in this moment with others, As Robert F. Capon wrote, we clutch at our lives rather than open our hands to our deaths. We clutch at our lives rather than open our hands to our death. And so true resurrection remains out of reach. You fool, we cannot beat death. We are not in control. And we may lose our soul before the end while trying to win. We think we are masters of our own ship, but we're unaware of the impending storms. And so Jesus wants us to stop, to consider. Jesus calls this man a fool because he's not considered. He's not considered that his life is on loan from God. He thinks he is his own God. That life is a gift, not something to be hoarding and controlling with a tight fist. It's hard to stop and to consider big things, to stop and think. We're afraid if we do, we might be overcome with fear. We might not be able to start again. To just keep going, be busy earning, as Ecclesiastes says. Keep burning that midnight oil till it all goes poof. Being unaware of the frailty and vanity of life. Thinking that we'll someday get to that place of peace. Remember, the Hebrew root word for vanity is air, shared with the word idol. Chasing after idols made of air. And what's the alternative? Investing in relationships, loving others around us, realizing what's important and how short life is, and those whose God has called us to love. The rich man has a misplaced vision of heaven. He thinks it's here in what he does now, as if we could gorge ourselves happy. Jesus wants to rescue us from that logic before we die, so that we can have a full and fulfilling life. John 10:10, he said, "The thief comes to steal and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it to the full." Full and content. That's an image. Maybe you know people like that are just content. They are open-handed. I think about my grandparents. Maybe you think about the image of grandparents. They found so much joy in being with you. It felt so good that they were just happy to be with you, no matter where or what you were doing. Or finding joy in spoiling the grandkids. It's really about finding joy and giving it all away. To find joy in not what we thought was important, our reputation, our possessions, our security, but stopping, sitting, giving away time and care for others. Let us ask God to give us all the grace to be able to stop, to consider what God has given us. May God expose our own personal vanity projects, our chasing after wind, so that we may stop clutching at our lives. May God give us the power to give up, to release and give away, for the sake of love, joy, and peace. Amen.